last 10 years, it was black and white, mostly here. But as we move along, we started getting Hispanics. Now you got Somalians.
Questions, responses? I mean, there are a lot of things in here, I'm sure, that you guys saw that ring true. Anything that raises any questions or responses or things that maybe some of the others, any of us actually, saw?
I was very impressed by the balance in the film, by the fact that they very, very pointedly brought out the real difficulties people have, and yet the whole upbeat tone of the film on, instead of crying in your beer, what you can do about things.
And what this movie shows is that we have a broken immigration system that's not working for anybody. It doesn't work for Americans, it doesn't work for immigrants, and that we need to do something about that.
I think the thing that I noticed, and I'm going to make a whole bunch of Christians in the room real mad, to that I apologize. But one of the things that I noticed was the response from the Baptist and the Presbyterian is that we're going to do our welcoming in this aspect that we're going to save them in Jesus' name. Mm-hmm. Okay, in the name of Allah, they save themselves. Mm-hmm. Managed to get here, however they got here, praying 5 times a day. And a whole bunch of Christians getting ready to pray 5 times a day religiously. I don't care for what, except for maybe Super Bowl. Having said that, it's annoying that this attitude is that we're going to be welcoming in Jesus' name. And if we can convert you, come on.
God has appointed some of these Somalian people for salvation.
They don't care about the ones that were born and raised here. They much rather take care of them instead of us.
There's a lot of people in the town that are fed up. It is their culture, it's their way of life that we're being forced to comply with.
It's a mess.
You know, at some point I think we're going to have to wake up, the entire world is going to have to wake up to the fact that it's one planet, learn how to share it.
What was interesting in Shelbyville, though, there was a progression in the movie. In the end, there was an interfaith group being formed. It was the imam, and I don't remember which faith. Maybe it was
the Presbyterian.
The Presbyterian, who had been really very negative, I thought, all the way through in terms of his.
He looked scared to death. He looked scared to death. But the two of them coming together to form the interfaith.
And I think he looked more scared to death about how his own congregation would respond to a Barack Obama becoming president, which
that's also true.
You know, outside of the birthers, the rest of us believe that Barack's been here all his life. But again, you know, and so how do you say to a people who come from war-torn countries or come from stark poverty into this country, how do you welcome them when you're not quite ready to welcome your own president?
Somali kids, they're very aggressive, very aggressive.
From what I know about Muslims, they don't like us. They're out to kill us, as we know from 911, and it just scares me.
There are national news articles coming out about Somalis that have ended up back in their home country getting terrorism training.
Every time you take a look at any of the polling that's been done nationally or, for that matter, locally, what you find over and over again, despite the Arizonas and despite some of the crisis kinds of stuff, is that a very substantial majority of Americans value, are respectful of, will say that immigrants are not only welcome here, but if they're out with documents, there ought to be some way to find a way to get them on a path to documentation and to citizenship. Every single poll, it's been higher or lower, but never below 50%. It's always been 60, 65, 70, 71, 75%, depending on the period of time. That's not to say that you haven't got a residual group of 10 to 15% who are hateful and unaccepting of anybody that doesn't look exactly like themselves.
I'm very hopeful, but I also know it's going to be bloody. And by that I mean there's always going to be that, as you say, 15% There has to be strong central leadership that's going to bite the bullet on this and move with the growth that, the river flowing in the movie, it goes on, the river flows. There has to be leadership, as there was with, say, a Kennedy and a Johnson in the integration question, that went ahead despite that 15%. That 15% is going to have to be pulled out of its niche for the other 85% to move forward. That's always been that way, and that's the bloody part. But I think it's going to depend a lot on the leadership that is going to realize the moral impetus of this question and get the job done.
Bad news, I don't like it, bad news. I want to talk to all people, but I don't know what's wrong.
I feel like now the Somalis are going through what we as Hispanics went through, or going through, and I feel like somebody needs to come forward and say something, do something.
We have grown in the South. We need not to be racist. But if you step back and do nothing, they will think, well, those people won't say nothing, they'll just take it.
But on a local level, I think we need to get to know the other people in our community. And it can be a really difficult thing to do. I think, who do you talk to, as you were saying? Who do you reach out to? What if there's a language barrier? So I think those are all things we have to consider. But again, that first step is just maybe knowing the person who lives on your street, or the person you've seen at the place where you worship, or who, just a person you see in line at the grocery store who looks like they need a hand.
Talk to me. Ask me questions. If I'm not approachable, then talk to somebody else that looks like me that is. If you feel like I might intimidate you because of how I look, or how I dress, or who I hang with. And the last thing, I know no strangers, and so I don't like to say get out of your comfort zone or think outside the box. I don't have a box.
We talk about talking. Actually, we do better if we do a good deal more listening.